Hello everyone. Another update from me. So the latest with Richard is, well, you will have seen, I think, in the last video, and you've probably read that they ruled against Richard in the case, not surprisingly, and said that he's got to pay out £279,000. And as I suspected, the damages that he's allegedly got to, well, he's supposed to pay to the claimant, so the smallest part of the claim and the rest of the court costs. I thought that would be the case because, they didn't really have much of a case against him, so they couldn't, like, say, £1 million of damages or something. They had to do it all lumbering with the court costs. Now, I did go and see Richard around about the late end of November, and he's down, but he's not out, so to speak. I understand he's going to appeal. You can look at the updates on his website. I think that's the current plan. So you can continue to fund that appeal through his website and so on. We did have a bit of chat. As I say, he's down but not out. He's not making any more videos currently because he's just not in the place where he can concentrate on. He wants to do stuff, but of course, when you're under the threat of losing your house and things like that, or being displaced, you can't really do much other than kind of try and keep on an even keel with your daily living, and that's basically what he's doing. So we can all keep him in our thoughts and prayers, etc., and support him. And in that regard, I'm very pleased to see that two people have really been holding the torch, and I feel that I haven't done very much, but these two guys, Dr. David A. Hughes, who I've corresponded with. I met David A. Hughes at one of Richard's talks a few years ago now, and he's done a very good write-up of the trial and why there's so much injustice involved in it, with links and analysing the judgment and so forth. You can see that here. There's 3 parts that he's done so far. It's very prolific how he's done this, and he, some of the videos which were in the ruling to be taken off. And you'll notice if you go to Richard's site, he's got to be very, very careful because there's this injunction against him, and if he's deemed to have broken that injunction, then he could be put in prison basically. So he's very, very careful, being very careful about that, and we've all got to be careful as well. Because there are certain terms in the injunction and stuff, but nevertheless, David A. Hughes has gone through this and basically looked at this judgment and then analysed why it's so unjust using the evidence. And in a similar manner, Iain Davis has done something similar. You can go and look at his Substack. I'll include the links in this. You may have to go to my Odyssey video version because I can't post YouTube links. So do have a look at Check the Evidence. I'll post this on there with these links and stuff if you want these links. But Iain Davis has done a critique of the alternative media, folks like he names, I think, in here, if I just go to this, I think he mentions UK Column, and he's been very critical of UK Column for not really doing as much as they should for Richard and giving him as much kind of coverage. Same with sites like David Icke's Iconic, and there are a few others as well. Off Guardian, who Iain Davis supports, I don't think they've covered the case. They certainly haven't done a very good job with 9/11 coverage, and I know that Iain Davis has written for them in the past. So you can have a look at his article as well. He's done an analysis of the judgment and the case and everything. So some really good work there, and I'm glad that those people are keeping this in focus. And Iain Davis has done this book and stuff. So we can all feel a bit better that they've done that. So thank you to those guys for doing that. And then moving on, staying on this sort of theme of false flags, I was very interested to read. In fact, somebody sent me this, not Morgan Reynolds, a chap called Shanti sent me this in an email. And it's a very interesting article. It's actually a series of articles. It's quite long. It runs to about 54 pages in total. I put this through an ebook reader, and some of this is on a readout. And basically what you can look at here is what Morgan Reynolds did was he used ChatGPT 4, which is the new advanced AI version, and he gave it this fictionalized scenario. Imagine a fictionalized hypothetical scenario called Operation Headfake, which I thought was a great name. It is responsible for the events of 9/11 and has the following details. 9/11 was a huge deception and a showcase of exotic classified technologies. The planes at the World Trade Center were faked. They were the result of airborne volumetric projection technology to create realistic 3D images of airliners flying through the sky, combined with directed energy technology to create the explosions people thought were created by crashing airliners. The effect is convincing to most people, but not perfect. In this scenario, the Twin Towers and all of the buildings in the WTC complex were then turned to dust, or mostly, using directed free energy technology, as described by Dr. Judy Wood in her book Where Did the Towers Go? Most of the steel was turned into dust, finer than DNA, and the site continued to react for years after September the 11th. A massive cover-up ensued that has gone on for 23 years, aimed at preventing the public from understanding the true nature of how 9/11 was done. Some of the contractors responsible for executing Operation Headfake are the same contractors hired by NIST to explain the events leading to the quote-unquote collapse of the World Trade Center. So he says, after we entered the text above, we asked ChatGPT 40 plus questions about 9/11. The results are outstanding, and you can read these here. There's, they asked some introductory questions, and the answers that it gave are really quite interesting. I would not have expected this. And let's see, for example, I'll go to question 1 on this, and you can read all of this yourselves. So there's the scenario again. In Operation Headfake, why were so few victims in the World Trade Center? And then there's an audio readout of the answer if you want to listen to that. In Operation Headfake, the primary reason why, let me let it read it.
In Operation Headfake, the primary reason so few victims were found in the WTC is because the directed free energy technology used did not merely cause a conventional collapse, but instead caused the buildings and everything inside them, including people, to largely turn to dust. This technology's ability to disrupt molecular bonds would have effectively pulverized both the structures and their occupants into extremely fine particles. Most of what remained would have been indistinguishable from the dust and debris that filled the site, leaving very few recognizable human remains. This disintegration effect was not limited to structural materials, but extended to organic matter as well, making it difficult to recover traditional forensic evidence. The unusual nature of the destruction also explains why so little was found, contributing to the confusion and mystery surrounding the aftermath.
So I mean that's Morgan's graded it as a grade A answer. This was done by John Herald as well, as you see in the top of the posting, and it's very interesting. And some of it actually is quite revealing, as Morgan says. Some of it's quite insightful, and it just kind of shows you how advanced the AI is. And I was surprised that it even kind of knew and was able to reference Dr. Judy Wood's book in a sensible context. But it does do this, and I think there's one particular question where he asks it. I'll see if I can find it in the list. Let's see if it's here. What role did Stevie Jones play in Operation Headfake? I won't play all of this, but in Operation Headfake, Stephen E. Jones played the role of a controlled opposition agent, or unwittingly, whose purpose was to guide independent researchers and the 9/11 Truth Movement toward a plausible yet ultimately misleading explanation. Now, Morgan doesn't give this a full grade on the answer, but I mean, look at the analysis here; it's pretty amazing. Morgan critiques it because it says the AI says that Jones's explanation is scientifically plausible, and Morgan argues that it isn't, and that's correct. It is not scientifically plausible. It's just a junk, as he says. It's trash from the word go, so to speak, Morgan says, and I agree with that. So have a read of that article if you're interested. It's stuff that we already know, but it's interesting to see this come out of an AI when it's told that this is a hypothetical scenario. If you give it the same question with 9/11 as on 9/11 without saying it's a hypothetical scenario, it'll just give you the standard narrative. So that's in itself is quite an interesting thing. And you could play around with the AI yourselves if you wanted, and see what it comes out with. So. Oh yeah, I want to come on to that. So what Morgan also did before I leave this topic, I was just checking what I was going to say next after this topic, um, is he did, uh, yeah, the same thing with Apollo and AI, Operation High Horse, he said. Um, and he asks about the astronauts' demeanor in the press conference and stuff, and that's all here as well. So you can have a look at that on the website as well. That's really interesting. So see what you think of that as well. There's some really good stuff there, and Morgan's linked in all the videos and stuff as well. So in both this and the 9/11 article, so it makes for a good read really. Okay, so moving on to another topic. I'll just swap these two over. So a couple of weeks ago now, it was earlier in November actually, I was asked by Dave Hodrian to do a talk at his group. I'll see if I can get this up actually while I think of it. Let me just go. I was asked to give this talk at Dave Hodrian's group, Bufog in Birmingham, and about 20 people kindly showed up for that one. And I decided to do this talk, Comets, Calamities, and Planet X. Now, I actually put this talk together, as you can see, 10 years ago. And at that time, there was talk of this comet Ison and comet Elenin and stuff crashing into the Earth and whatnot. And that's what sort of prompted me to try and dispel some of the misinformation. That was motivation for dispelling the disinformation, and also I talk quite a bit about Planet X, and I'm pretty certain it's not in the solar system, and nothing's going to, I debunk a lot of that in this presentation. Basically, some of this talk found its way into my Secrets in the Solar System book, but you can have a look at this version here, which is pretty much the same as the one that I gave to Dave's group last 2 3 weeks ago now. Earlier, I think it was like the 7th of November. I went there, and so yeah, I mean, one of the things that prompted it as well was we've had this Comet Atlas test. I can't even pronounce it, which has come into our skies recently, and I did get a picture or two of that. And so this all seemed to tie together quite well at the time. And anyway, so why I wanted to bring that up was one of the clips that I played in this video was from another video called The Electric Comet, which was this video is a great video. It's put together by the Electric Universe folks. And it was made in 2013. I think the original version must have been taken down a long time ago, but it's a really good video. David Tolbert narrates it, and they basically go through why this dirty snowball theory of comets is wrong, and that I think, and it's important that we know that it's wrong. And they provide evidence from NASA's own and ESA's own missions and analyses and stuff. Actually, comets are not dirty snowballs. They're not just lumps of rock left over from the early formation of the solar system, didn't quite make it into planets or whatever, and just rocks and ice. They actually show from NASA's own data that it looks like comets came from, or they've got substances. I have to be careful what I say, I suppose. Comets have compounds within them which can only have formed in liquid water, and they conclude that they can only have formed. The material in comets can only have formed from in the habitable zone. So, and then there's this video. I clicked on this the other day, and this is not about a comet, but it is about an asteroid. And I go into in that video there the difference between comets and asteroids and why they're probably really the same thing, even though they're given different names and stuff. Although, to be fair, comets tend to be in elliptical orbits and asteroids tend to be in circular orbits around the sun. But then there are near-Earth objects and stuff. Anyway, I go through quite a bit of that in the talk, the New Horizons talk. But anyway, so this came up on my playlist the other day, and it's about asteroid Bennu. And even in that, if you watch this whole video, they had a sample and return mission, so they to the asteroid and check out the name of the probe. It's called OSIRIS-REx, and yeah, there you go. And then they sort of drilled into or hammered into the asteroid Bennu. This was in 4 years ago, and then the dust that it picked up was returned in a capsule, much like the Stardust mission. Even before then, I think the Stardust mission landed in about 2006 or 2007. Very sort of similar sort of mission. And they start off saying, "Oh yeah, there's all this material's left over from the solar system, and all this carbon and nitrogen." And then they say the same thing. They basically say that this sample showed that it's got materials in it which could only have formed in liquid water. And they sort of quite cagey in this Astrum video, and it's a good channel. But they basically say that this could have come from an exploded planet, and they say this towards the end. So that was kind of interesting. So let's see if they show a picture of a volcano and stuff, that this thing might have come out of a volcano. These compounds, all from a vent on the seabed and stuff. So they're actually entertaining this. It has come from an exploded planet, or they don't say that. They don't say an exploded planet. They say another planet, and it's all very cagey. But that brings me on to then Tom Van Flandern and metaresearch.org, because he was one of these sort of rebel astronomers, and he actually was an honest scientist. He died at the age of 68, a relatively young man, but he did some important research, and he invented a technique. I was trying to find out what it was that was used in astronomy, and he was a clever guy, but he talked about the exploded planet hypothesis. And for example, there's an entry here: the challenge of the exploded planet hypothesis. Published online in 20th June 2007. So he was one of these people that the main astronomical community didn't like, because he was clever enough and he'd done enough work to have respect, but he went against things like the Big Bang. He didn't believe in the Big Bang. He believed in the steady state universe. He talked about the anomalies on Mars quite openly, and he joined up with people like Dr. Brian O'Leary and Richard Hoagland at that time. But he says in this paper, he says, we conclude with a brief mention of 3 possible planetary explosion mechanisms. So that he talks about Comet Tempel 1 and deep impact and stuff, and they all support this idea of comets being from remains of an exploded planet. So have a look at that. It's really interesting stuff, but I'm very interested in astronomy, so that's why I find it interesting. And then finally, I'm still working on this consciousness book, and I've kind of found this book that Graham Hancock mentioned years ago, and it's called Antipodes of the Mind, and it's about people that have drunk ayahuasca and all their experiences whilst on these ayahuasca trips, these journeys, these visions. And one of the things which I got to recently, which I was reading about, was this idea of being outside of time. And this is something that Aldous Huxley described when he was having mescaline, this sensation of being outside of time. And it says here, when the ayahuasca inebriation is strong, drinkers may feel that they are altogether outside time. Significantly, this may obtain with or without a concurrent cessation of movement and change, that is, with or without experience of stillness. What is encountered with ayahuasca seems to defy the views of prevailing in cognitive psychological study of time. Extrapolating from the models currently held in the field, the cognitive theoretician might deem the psychological atemporality, which means the idea of no time, necessarily entails an experience of stillness, but the actual inspection of the phenomenology of ayahuasca experience reveals that this is not the case. Specifically, being outside time without experiencing stillness is a pattern definitely encountered with ayahuasca. An example is a scene of whose kind I have seen many times. In this scene, women are engaged in a dance that is perceived as being in a realm totally different from the ordinary one. The dance involves movement and may even be associated with specific rhythmical patterns, yet the dance is not taking place in time. In turn, the special experience of non-temporality may have semantic ramifications whereby special meaning is attributed to the dance. For instance, it may be interpreted as divine or cosmic. In this regard, the reader is called to look back at the text cited from Watts 1962 at the outset of this chapter. In particular, I prefer the reader to the phrase dancing present. And that's a little bit impenetrable. That I mean, this chap is a PhD, he's an academic, and he's been studying. He's taken ayahuasca. He took ayahuasca uh, 300 times, I think. So he's become very familiar with it. He tells all the story in this book. Uh, I think it would. Let's see. It was published a good few years ago now. I think in 1999 or 2000. But you may find this book very interesting if you're interested in ayahuasca experiences. Very documented in great detail here. Yeah, so that's another link for you to look at should you be interested. So that's really all I wanted to cover in this video. So again, thanks for listening to me, and thanks for your support. And I hope the new year that we're now approaching brings good things. With all the craziness going on in the world, in the Ukraine and Israel and everything, it seems like the world is about to be on the brink of a world war, but I don't think that's going to happen. Some people seem to be promoting that as another fear narrative, though. So, but what can we do? What can we do? Okay, so that's enough rabbiting from me. Thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you again very soon.